Hi everyone, I'm Adinda Putri Maharani from R4A. We'll give you a lesson about passive voice in English. So let's get started. Before that, this lesson is inspired by Miss Emma from English on YouTube. Thank you, Miss Emma. If you ask me about is passive voice really important to us? The answer is yes. Understand the passive voice is really important. In this lesson, you will learn about what it looks like, why it's useful, and also you will practice with me. So the first is, what is passive voice? Passive voice is a sentence where the subject is subjected to a job or action from the verb, meaning that it's not the subject who performs the action. Why should you use the passive voice? First, there is the moment when you don't want to say who or what did he act, or because actually the object is the most important part of the sentence. You can use the passive to change the focus of your sentence. Before we continue, we should know about the active voice first. The difference between active and passive voice lies in the focus of the sentence. The active voice is focused on the person or the subject performing the action. For example, the chef cooks the meal. The subject is the chef, verb is cooks, and the object is the meal. The subject does the action to the object. For example, like when you watch a cooking show on TV, the cameraman also always focuses on the chef when he is making the food, not just the food. So the sentence, the chef cooks the meal, is as if you are watching a cooking program. You only focus on the chef and all the steps he takes. While passive voice is focused on the recipient of the action, or the object becomes the subject of the sentence. For example, the meal is cooked by the chef. The meal is the object, cook is a verb, by the chef is a subject. An example of an analogy is like when you watch a cooking show on TV, but this time the cameraman focuses on the food, not the chef. You realize that the food looks beautiful and start asking, wow, who cooked this? The answer is at the end. The meal is cooked by the chef. So the focus is on the result, the meal, not the chef. The reason is to use the passive voice because we don't know who cooked the meal. Next is use of passive voice. The use of passive voice is often found in newspaper. For example, when journalists cannot say who did something, maybe because they don't know who did it. Besides that, we often find it in scientific reports and legal documents. The information of passive voice has to be objective. Let's move on to the common passive expression that you already know. So the example is, when you introduce one of your friends to another friend, you don't say, people call her Jenna. You will say, she is called Jenna. The passive voice is followed by the past participle. Let's review to the previous example. Before that, there are steps to change an active sentence to a passive sentence. For example, is the chef cooks the meal. First is identify the subject, the verb, and the object. The subject is the chef, verb is cooks, and object is the meal. Second, move the object to become the new subject of the sentence. The object is the meal, so the meal becomes the subject. Third, what is the verb tense in the active sentence? From the sentence, it is the simple present tense. Fourth, conjugate the verb to be. The active sentence is simple present tense, so the form of to be for the meal is. Fifth, add the past participle of the main verb after to be. The third form of the verb cooks is cook. And the last is add by plus subject. It becomes by the chef. So the answer of passive voice is the meal is cooked by the chef. So let's move on to the practice. It's your turn to determine the reason why the passive voice sentence answer is like this. So the practice one is active voice. The teacher explains the lesson. Passive voice is the lesson is explained by the teacher. So how to change it? Let me give you an explanation. First, we should identify the subject, verb, and object. The subject is the teacher, verb is explains, and the object is the lesson. Second, the object is the lesson, so the lesson becomes the subject. Third, the form of the verb used is the first form of the verb, so the type of sentence is simple present tense. Fourth, the active sentence is a simple present tense, so the to be form for the lesson is. Fifth, the third form of the verb explain is explained. And sixth, by plus subject, so it becomes by the teacher. So this is the explanation why the answer of passive voice is the lesson is explained by the teacher. Let's move on to the practice 2. he has written a letter, and the passive voice is a letter has been written by him. I will give you an explanation about this. First, identify the subject, verb, and object. The subject is he, and the sentence contains auxiliary verb, and the auxiliary verbs is has. Verb, written, object, a letter. Second, the object is a letter, so a letter becomes the subject. Third, the form of the verb used is the third form of the verb, so the type of sentence is present perfect tense. Fourth, the active sentence is a present perfect tense, so the to be form for a letter is has plus been. Fifth, the third form of the verb write is written. And sixth, by plus subject, so it becomes by him. So this is the reason why the passive voice sounds like a letter has been written by him. The conclusion is, passive voice is used when the focus of the sentence is on the action or the receiver of the action, not the door. We use it especially when, first, the door is a noun, unimportant or obvious. Second, we want to sound more formal or objective. And the third is, we want to emphasize the results or the object. Okay, so thank you for joining this lesson. I hope you guys like it, and I'm sorry if there are many mistakes from me. See you!